One of the most curious stories circulating on the internet is the existence of an artificial satellite that orbits our planet for more than 13,000 years, known as the Black Knight. The story goes back to 1899. By that time, Tesla moved to a laboratory in Colorado Springs to begin his experiments with high voltage and electric field measurements. During the 8 months he was there, he spent some of his time developing small signal receivers and measuring the capacity of vertical antenna. During his observations, Tesla picked up a periodic signal that came from somewhere in space. But it was not until May 14, 1954 when the history of the satellite of unknown origin took shape. In the newspaper Louis Post-Dispatch and the newspaper San Francisco Examiner appeared articles that mentioned of the presence of the two satellites in the orbit of our planet, in an age, let us not forget, in which no nation had not yet placed any. In 1960, both the Soviet Union and the United States already had satellites in the orbit, but on February 11, the alarm was raised again, since an unidentified one was detected in a polar orbit, which neither the Russians nor the Americans recognized as their own. Was it the Black Knight again? 3 years later, Gordon Cooper was launched into space to perform the mission of giving 22 returns to Earth. In his last orbit, he reported seeing a light in front of his capsule. It is said that the tracking station Mukea in Australia captured the radar echo of the object reported by Cooper. They say the NASA version is that the ventilation equipment malfunctioned and the excess CO2 caused hallucinations to appear to the astronauts. At that time, the mysterious object was already called the Black Knight. In 1973, Duncan Lunan, a Scottish researcher, wrote an article in Spaceflight, a magazine of the British Interplanetary Society, detailing how he had identified and decoded a message issued in 1920 from a satellite in orbit of Earth captured by some Norwegian and German researchers were conducting a study on the effect of long-delayed echo. Lunan maintained that the message came from an object at the Lagrange L5 point and contained an invitation from the inhabitants of planet of the star system Epsilon Boa. According to him, the message said, "Our house is in Epsilon Boa, which is a double star. We live on the sixth planet of 7, the greater of the two suns. The sixth planet has a moon. Our fourth planet has 3. Our first and third planets, 1 each. The probe is in the position of Arcturo according to our maps." But the graphic evidence came with the mission of the space shuttle STS-88, the first that had as mission to bring equipment to the ISS. The cameras of the Endeavour captured several strange objects, and the photographs were published in the repository of the NASA. But apparently after a few days, the photos disappeared, but they had already been published elsewhere. According to NASA, what is seen in these images are remains of the shuttle itself. It is true that there is a satellite orbiting the Earth thousands of years old, issuing an invitation to an encounter between civilizations. Why are they hiding it from us? If you like this type of stories, do not see. But if you prefer to know the truth, you should. In 1899, Nikola Tesla called the signal of a pulsar. A pulsar is a neutron star that emits periodic radiation. The pulsar possesses an intense magnetic field that induces the emission of these pulses of electromagnetic radiation at regular intervals related to the period of rotation of the object. In fact, when in 1967 Jocelyn Bell and Anthony Hewish officially discovered the first pulsar, they also believed that they had contacted an intelligent civilization, since the periodicity of the signal seems to eliminate the possibility of being a natural phenomenon. The 1954 news of the existence of 1 or 2 spacecraft orbiting the Earth is if we read sarcastic notes of Donald Kehoe, a US Army pilot who in 1950 became famous, claiming that the United States was experimenting with UFOs, and that year he was promoting his book, Flying Saucers from Outer Space. For this, he could not think of anything but to testify that the Secretary of the Air Force was aware of the existence of these 2 ships, something that was immediately denied. The discoveries were a series of reconnaissance satellites that were launched between 1959 and 1972. On August 14, 1959, the Discoverer 8 retrocoat was activated from the ground, but the ship was not in the correct position. What happened was that instead of decelerate and enter the atmosphere, he fired into a high orbit and considered himself lost. The Dark Fence satellite scanning network, which was launched in late 1959, detected this object in February 1960, but a few days later it was identified as the Discoverer 8 satellite last months ago. This news is not usually mentioned in the websites that speak of the Black Knight. Gordon Cooper did not see any UFOs on their space missions. He always denied it. And as we can read in Space magazine, Cooper flatly denied the repeated assertion by several authors over the years, including Alan Hynek and Jack Caswell, that he saw an object on his Mercury 9 mission in 1963. In the Coast to Coast program, Cooper said, "Do not someone made a good pile of money selling lies like that. It's totally false." The interpretation of the LDEs by Duncan Lunan is still an exercise of imagination. When a signal is sent to the atmosphere, an echo returns after a period of up to 15 seconds. The delay is so great that it cannot be attributed to atmospheric conditions or magnetic storms. So far, the cause is still not fully understood, but the interpretation of the randomness of the echoes can be done in the way that interests the most. The LDEs are due to an atmospheric phenomenon that we will soon understand. There are many photographs such as those attributed to the Black Knight published by NASA that are made of plastics, wrappings and even cap that are left in the cargo apartment of the shuttle and that leave the space when the doors of the cargo hold. So I answered in 2010 to a message that I sent to JPL to ask about another similar object photographed on the STS-98 mission. Objects that move at low relative speeds relative to the craft, such as the one pictured on the STS-88 mission, come from the same shuttle. After reviewing the image and the preceding frames in the sequence, our opinion is that the light spots are point reflections from space debris released from the shuttle payload bay. Small unsecured objects introduced into the bay during pre-launch processing of the orbiter, such as pen covers and baseball caps, can be released when the bay doors open for mission activities. Mission-related activities such as release of experiments or satellites can also release small debris from the payload bay. The low Earth orbit region, that is up to 2,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface, in which the Space Shuttle and International Space Station operate, has the highest concentration of space debris, while some of this debris is comprised of spent rocket boosters and defunct satellite fragments traveling at high speeds relative to the shuttle or International Space Station. Objects moving slowly enough to be photographed by the crew are of local origin and are traveling at less than 1 meter per second speeds. This type of space debris typically presents no danger to the spacecraft or crew.